Welcome to Wild Treasures, our series that highlights some of South Africa's rare and endangered species. On our radar today is a relatively unknown mammal, the pangolin. The name itself means something that rolls up. Pangolins are the only mammals with scales covering them. There are 8 different species of pangolins, with 4 living in Asia and 4 others in Africa. Fossil evidence suggests that pangolins might have lived in Europe at some point in time, and it's believed by scientists that they have been around for 80 million years. Here in Africa we find the long-tailed pangolin, the three-crested pangolin, the giant ground pangolin, as well as the Cape pangolin, which is also known as the Temminck ground pangolin. They are characterized by overlapping plate-like scales made up of keratin, the same protein found in human hair, nails, as well as rhino horn. They have a sticky tongue that can grow longer than their actual body, large curvy claws and a tail which they use with their body to form a ball-like shape when they feel threatened. They vary in size and can weigh anything from 1.6 kilograms to 33 kilograms, with the males 10 to 50% larger than their female counterparts. They also differ in color from light yellowish to dark brown. They are nocturnal and highly secretive, which is why not many people know a lot about them. They are insectivores that mainly feed on ants and termites and can consume about 200 grams of insects per day. They use their tongue with ant-catching saliva to eat their prey and will often eat small stones to help grind the food in their stomach. Their lifespan in the wild is relatively unknown, but they are said to live as long as 20 years in captivity. The Temminck ground pangolin is the second largest of the species, although their sizes do vary, with the larger ones living in moist environments. The most notable differences in pangolins in Africa and Asia is the habitat choices and their size.
Well, I think the Asian species most of them are tree pangolins. Here in Africa we've got our ground pangolin, which is in the southern part, which is the ones that I've worked with. And then we've got 2 tree species further up in Africa, in Central Africa and West Africa. And then we've got the very little sighted giant pangolin, which is sort of in the belt, sort of in the Congo area.
Nikki Wright has worked with various animals, but fell in love with this species back in 2009 when she helped rehabilitate an injured one brought to a veterinary clinic.
You know, every species is unique. I think pangolin are especially unique. You know, most people haven't seen them in the wild. Most people going into game reserves and on game drives want to see them, and it's a very difficult animal to find in the wild. So having one in the hand, you're almost overwhelmed with the proximity to this sort of mythical beast that has suddenly been placed in your arms for you to care for. I think when they start to unroll and they start looking at you, they have this tiny little face and these bright, intelligent eyes, and they're very, very quiet and very cautious, but intelligent. And that's what struck me. They have a different feeling and a different aura around them to any other animal that I've worked with.
Less than a decade later, she is still in love with them and has an opportunity to contribute towards their protection as project manager for the African Pangolin Working Group.
I think it's just their incredible uniqueness. You know, they're the only mammal with scales. They're such a mythical sort of a creature. It's just their uniqueness that is so incredible. My favorite characteristic about them is that they're completely self-contained. You know, they have their own built-in protection. They're very, very contained animals, and their only threat is man.
Information on the species' behavior has come in drips and drabs, but progress is being made. For instance, it has since been discovered that pangolins are diurnal during certain parts of the year, despite being predominantly nocturnal.
It would be a seasonal issue because, you know, in winter it's cold, so they need to thermoregulate. They need to warm up their bodies before they can go and forage, and in order to digest their food, which is ants and termites, properly, their body temperature needs to be at a certain temperature. So they need to come out earlier during winter to get the warmth to be able to forage and digest their food properly.
Sadly, these animals do get poached, and it takes a great amount of effort to rehabilitate rescued ones back to health.
When they come in, when they're confiscated, they generally are always dehydrated, because don't forget they've been in a sack or a box or a car boot or something like that for, it could be up to 2 weeks by the time they come down and they're found or discovered. So there'll always be issues of dehydration. Sometimes they're snared, so they'll have you know, tissue injuries around their paws or around their feet or around their necks. They might have panga injuries. They might have, you know, just abrasions and bruises and that kind of thing. They actually have quite sensitive skin underneath their scales. Yeah.
Pangolins are the most poached animals in the world, with their scales being used for traditional medicine and some hunted for bushmeat. Tens of thousands of pangolins are poached every year for scales and their meat. The scales are used to make traditional Chinese and African medicine.
We use them for healing. Healing is a primary thing for it. So, and when we use it for healing, it helps. You find someone has your poison, your food poisoning. So when they drink it, we're just going to put it inside of the water for some time. You have to drink it according to the subscription. You just don't drink it. You have to follow the instructions accordingly, my king. Then after that, we use it also, you know, we use some of the bones, you know, and we just use it. It's one of the important animals in our cultures, especially as black people. You know, we use it to heal. When we have it, we are fortunate. Yes.
According to traditional healer Ntsika Kolosa, the scales when grinded are used to strengthen a home from other forces when mixed with herbs.
Basically, as I've said, because, you know, we are healers, we are healers, then we have a different definition of using them. So basically, I will say I take this, then I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna wrap it, like I'm gonna do what do you call this? Yes, I'm gonna make it to be fine. Then I do sometimes when I do the same thing. You know, I put it in there. Hence I said it's a strength animal. So if ever I mix my herbs and I put it inside, I know that, you know what, this is a special remedy.
Currently, pangolins are listed as Appendix 2 according to the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, otherwise known as CITES, meaning that controlled permits are granted to certain individuals for trade purposes.
We source, there's a market for traditional healers because some of us don't have license to go and hunt. So there's a market for traditional healers. Usually traditional, in my mind, you will find such animals there. So because some guys, they do have those licenses, we'll go to them because we will go. And some other animals we don't know. We'll go to them, then they will now teach us, no, this is what we have to do. You know, but people must be very, very careful in terms of using such animals and say, no, I heard it works, because it needs you to have a guidance, how to use it and when to use it and for what.
Pangolins are rarely observed due to their secretive, nocturnal and solitary nature. They only meet to mate with their prospective partners, with some of them living in ground tunnels as deep as 3.5 meters and others arboreal. There are very few organizations that have dedicated themselves toward the plight of these animals. One such group is the African Pangolin Working Group.
Sure. The African Pangolin Working Group was established in 2011, and we've only just recently been approved by the Government Department of Social Welfare. We're now a registered NPO. It was established in 2011 by a group of conservation-orientated people, not just scientists, but people concerned about our wildlife, for protecting Africa's 4 species of pangolins, which are all threatened, rare, and are on their way to extinction if current levels continue.
This particular species faces various threats, one of them being deforestation.
We've got a number of challenges because the species is harvested not only by African communities, but also the international trade from to Asia is a huge threat to pangolins and all 4 species of pangolins, including the one that occurs in South Africa, the Temi's ground pangolin. So, you know, to conserve the species from extinction, just like any other species have the right to exist on planet Earth, we found it an important sort of objective to provide some sort of sounding board, a conservation board, to look after them, and that's our primary role. And our challenges are, at this stage in South Africa, is to educate the public about pangolin awareness and the plight of pangolins in South Africa and Africa in general. And we provide a source of information, news, and conservation awareness just to the general public.
Poaching in Africa is on an all-time high, with authorities catching perpetrators with tons of scales.
Sure, I think if we look at over the last 5 years, the amount of pangolin poaching has increased exponentially. This year alone, we're in excess of 15 tons that's been intercepted in Asia, ports such as Hong Kong, that emanate from Africa, from a number of countries in Africa, but including South Africa. There was a shipment from Durban last year in excess of 2 tons. Shipments out of Mombasa in East Africa, also 4 tons, and out of the ports such as Mozambique, a large amount of scales are shipped from Africa to Asia to be used in traditional Chinese medicine mostly.
Much of the focus for the African Pangolin Working Group has been research and education to understand the trends when it comes to the uses and understanding the animal behavior.
We've got a number of conservation projects on the go. We do research on the bushmeat trade in pangolin in West Africa and countries such as Sierra Leone and Ghana. We've had ecology projects looking at the home range and habitat use of pangolins in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. I've had a student which is due to be qualified with a master's degree investigating the traditional uses of ground pangolins in South Africa and the importance they play in traditional customs in the South African rural communities. We've got ongoing lectures and talks that we give to the public in South Africa, and we currently got proposals on the table for the CITES uplisting from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 later this year at the COP17 conference in South Africa. So the projects are numerous, and we've got a lot of students on the ground.
time for us to take a break. When we return, we take a look at how the world plans to protect pangolins. Don't move.